and like to thank Councillor Dave Wolfe and Stephen Wolford from Mid Devon District Council for hosting us here today, and to the officers who have supported the organisation of this meeting. Before we go any further, I would like to invite Stephen Wolford to say a few words in his welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's absolutely no reason why you'd know this, but because I'm sure you don't watch Mid Devon District Council's meetings, but this is quite an alien space for me to be sitting because the way we arrange our meetings, I'm either normally sat there or over there. So it's a yes, welcome. I'm not going to speak for too long. You'll be pleased to know. Normally when we do these, you'd be used to hearing probably a litany of examples about how awesome the various council is that you're visiting. But I figured, bearing in mind that we're going to be part of 2 or 3 new teams at some point in the future anyway, I thought I'd just give you some headlines as to what we have in this part of Devon. So Mid Devon as a district, broadly speaking, kind of mid-table. And what I mean for that is whenever there's any kind of policy shift or financial announcement, if you look across the landscape of the Devon local government system, Mid Devon's always kind of mid-table. So we're a kind of useful bellwether in that regard. About 90% of the land in Mid Devon's agricultural. We have 3 larger towns, 62 parishes, so some larger centres, but basically quite rural. In terms of, I've just picked 3 of our maybe more significant industrial aspects. One from Crediton Dairy. As I said, I mentioned about agricultural. That supplies around 25% of England's supermarkets. Many of you will, I'm sure, be aware of Gregory Distribution, which started up in North Taunton, just moving coal, but now is based at Columpton and employs 2,500 people and millions of miles in logistics. And I was fortunate enough to be there for their centenary in 2019 when we had then Prince Charles come and visit. And finally, I would, and I've pointed this out to a few people when I've had civil servants come down, because not just a stone's throw, a long throw, but a stone's throw from here is Heathcote Fabrics. And that's where you go to if you want to land a parachute on Mars. And that's what they do, all kinds of technical advanced manufacturing of fabrics. Just to bring the link back to the CCA, and for the reason that you're here today, the CCA was good enough to invest funds in net zero care leaver units, which Mid Devon delivered. And my administration here at Mid Devon has a significant priority around social housing delivery. And whilst we are still, 1.5 days away from the end of the financial year, I can tell you that this year we will have built around 80 new homes for social rent in this district. Not all net zero, but a decent chunk of them net zero modular build. And I know that many of you will have visited either new developments or show homes as we've had them available. And finally, on that point, I would say that I know that point around both net zero and social rent is dear to the hearts of many of the members of the board. And we are very pleased to see that rent arrears for our tenants in net zero modular build is virtually non-existent. I mean, we are at like 99.8 or 9. It is virtually non-existent because they are so inexpensive to run. So it's a really positive thing to be doing, and it will be a significant achievement when we can announce what the final total is. And we have absolutely had to step up and work up to that level. But to get to delivering 80 new social rented homes is a phenomenal achievement. And that's all I wanted to say, Chair. So thank you very much and welcome to all.
Thank you very much indeed, Stephen. Very kind of you. So as we move into the meeting then, we're not expecting a fire alarm. And should the alarm sound, please exit by the nearest exit and follow Mid Devon colleagues to the meeting point. You'll be aware that this meeting is being live streamed. please ensure that you use your microphones when speaking. And if I could request that all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. At that point, we now get into the thrux of the meeting. I call this meeting of the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority Board to order. Item 1, apologies for absence. To note any apologies for absence, please.
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillor Bialik today.
Thank you very much indeed. Declarations of interest. To receive any items, declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? None noted. Thank you very much. So we move on to the minutes of this board from the 26th of January. Like to confirm that they are correct of that 26th of January. Happy to move from the chair. Councillor Brazil, are you happy to second? Thank you very much indeed. Move to the vote then. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That is approved. Move on to item 4, which is the revenue and capital budget monitoring. Invite Matthew Thorpe to talk us through the report. Thank you.
Chair. So essentially, there's not a lot different from what the paper you received last time, which was month 9 position. Month 11 headline sees an overall improvement of just around 38,000, pretty much entirely linked with a slight improvement in terms of bank interest earnings on balances that we're still holding there. This is for month 11, so we're, as mentioned, we're about to close down the year. In 2 days' time, we'll be starting looking at that. But essentially, there's not much movement in this 1 month of report on report. I've not got much else to say, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much indeed. To formally bring this onto the table, I'll propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder around the room, please? Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And we will now move into any questions or debate on this item. Thank you, Councillor Brazil.
Yeah,
if I could ask you to use your microphone, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I've got a few questions here. First of all, reading through it, there are a few things if someone could give me an explanation as to what they are. So, for example, in 5.4, it talks about, if agreed, a transport levy may also be introduced. Someone could explain to me what that transport levy might be. And also in 5.3, it talks about including ongoing capacity fund income and management fees derived from programmes for which the DTCCA is the accountable body.
Sorry to interject, Councillor Brazil, but I think that those items
are
in the next report.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Anyway, you've got fair warning.
Thanks for giving us a heads up.
Yeah,
we'll be on that in just a moment.
Okay,
but I think we're on the budget monitoring at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Matthew, have I got that correct? Okay. So we'll just hold those questions just for a moment. I'm not seeing any further questions or debate for the budget monitoring, so I will move to the vote. This requires majority of the constituent council members and both lead members to vote in favour. So all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed, and item 4 is approved. We will move on to item 5, which is the revenue and capital budget. We know we already have some concerns from Councillor Brazil, which we will go into full detail in just a moment, but I will invite Matthew again to talk us through the report.
Okay, so just by way of introduction to this paper, this report presents the proposed revenue and capital budget and strategy for 26-27, together with indicative financial forecasts for 27-28 and 28-29. The report also seeks endorsement of a treasury management and investment strategy, and recognises minimum revenue provision policy strategy that at this stage remains prudent and continues to be delivered in line with the policies adopted by Devon County Council as a function delivered under the accountable body status. For the minimum revenue provision and the investment money, it details that actually as a borrowing strategy, as an organisation doesn't borrow, we're not impacted by those, so therefore there's a statement in there. The paper does set out the resources required to deliver the authority's statutory functions, the programmes for which it is accountable body, and the operational arrangements developed with the constituent councils. The report provides my statutory advice as Chief Finance Officer, Section 73 officer, on the robustness of the budget to support the delivery and mitigate risks that are explained within it, and also the adequacy of the reserves that we've now started to try and build up. In accordance with Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003. The 26-27 budget reflects both the opportunities and constraints facing the combined authority as a new organisation, and reflects and builds upon the financial position that we've experienced and reported on within the year. While substantial programme funding has been confirmed for the coming financial year, particularly around transport and adult skills functions, the long-term funding of core operating costs remains uncertain. The proposed budget therefore balances the need to deliver devolved responsibilities with the requirements to operate prudently, manage our financial risk, and begin building the organisational capability over future years, and also recognises the potential transition arrangements and deeper devolution models. Overall, the report seeks approval for a balanced budget, underpins the authority's operational framework for 26-27. And obviously the other recommendations in it. It's a bit more involved than the paper you had last year around this time, but that's recognising some of the more detailed agreements that we require.
Thank you very much. In order to bring this onto the table to open up the debate, we need a proposer and a seconder. Do we have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Fife Cook. And the seconder, I'm happy to second from the chair, no problem, which allows us then to come to debate. I'm going to come to Councillor Brazil first. You raised a few points, and then we'll open it up to a wider debate in just a moment. Thank you, Councillor.
So if I just repeat them, there were two. There's 5.3 and 5.4. In 5.3, it talks about management fees, and in 5.4, it talks about a transport levy. Just if I get a bit of explanation as to what those entail.
So just in terms of the management fee reference, that links back to the funding source around the government grant. So that's the core capacity grant funding that we received throughout this year as part of the financial settlement. They confirmed that the capacity funding grant will be rolled in with the national insurance grant that we received in year, effectively giving us funding of 390,000. In terms of the management fee element as well within it, what we've been exploring is, as part of the delivery programme of various programmes that we have, some will be eligible to kind of recover that management overhead from. So we'll be looking to explore that opportunity in year against the funding, and we've got a budget line within the income line that's called creates that need.
If it's just so, see what's upsetting me really is that the money that we used to get at Devon and Torbay used to get, say the millions of pounds for transport, is now been pushed up to the CCA, and what you're saying, and then that's delegated back down to the county and the Torbay. Are you saying that then they will charge a management, or we will charge a management fee for that?
Not on those significant capital pots. No, this is new programme delivery where we have a specific terms and conditions. So and like adult social care is one of them, isn't it? Or not adult education, sorry. So like we'll receive funding for adult education. We will apply an overhead recovery amount to that to facilitate the overview of that grant, the delivery of it. It's fairly minimal within the actual overall budget. I think it's 100,000 that we've got as a total target around that across the various streams that we get in.
Can I suggest, in order to help Councillor Brazil, could you maybe talk around the process that would be required to go from where we are to levies that are involved, please?
The Chair, Councillor Brazil, on the 2 points, so to build on what Matt was alluding to. So if you take, for example, UK Shared Prosperity funding and Rural England funding that the CCA has been responsible for this year, it's not uncommon for when government provides funding either to local authorities or to combined authorities for there to be some sort of cost recovery from a management overhead. If you use the UK SPF example, that fee this year was 100,000. The CCA's decision for that was to in effect allow DCC to retain that management fee because it was providing the administration services for UK SPF. So in a way, but that fee is the same. It's the same as if it would have been either to the CCA or to DCC. There's no additional double counting, if that's, I think, the point that you're alluding to. And similarly, if you take adult skills funding, as Matt was just alluding to, there's an opportunity for us to do cost recovery for that. That's to pay for the delivery of the programme. And because of the operational arrangements that we're putting in place for adult skills funding, which essentially is to delegate responsibility to DCC as the accountable body for that, that'll be a fee that's used to be able to deliver the programme. But that is, as I said, it's a zero-sum game in relation to where that fee is from. On the transport levy. So just to confirm to members, though, we're not asking you to approve a transport levy for this year, and that's partly because again, the operating model for transport is that given the uncertainty, as we've previously advised, the uncertainties in relation to future devolution, local government reorganisation, the operating model was pretty much to maintain transport delivery as is in both constituent authorities, although we are taking some steps, for example, to have a single capital programme, to have a single enhanced partnership. So they're moving us towards from Wednesday, when the CCA takes accountability for all local transport authority functions. So whether a levy is applied or not in future years is a decision for members, and it is entirely linked to the operating model for transport. So because transport is funded by a variety of different sources, so there's funding from DfT, there's local council tax revenue that supports some subsidised services, there's Section 106 funding that funds certain capital projects. The decisions that the board have previously made are that, for example, highways funding, local authority bus grant funding, that will continue to be passported through. Councillor Brazil, as you've alluded to, there's no requirement for the CCA to levy. If you flip the operational arrangements at some point in the future, there has to be a mechanism for the CCA to be able to pay for transport costs, and that would be through a levy mechanism, which is not uncommon in other areas of the country where you have local transport authorities that are separate to constituent councils. So we've alluded to it in the report because it is an option in future, but it entirely depends on the operating model that members and the constituent councils wish to have for transport.
Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully that responded directly to that point. Are there any other points? Councillor Long.
Just a very minor thing. I noticed in the Treasury Management section of the appendix that I know from the Fire Authority and indeed Torbay Council that the Audit Committee, where the money is invested, is listed in a separate sheet. I was just wondering if we could, whether that be other councils or particular banks, etc. I was just wondering if we could introduce that for future paperwork. Thank you.
Yep, we certainly can. Just to reassure members from that, this is bank interest earning receipts, so it's not like an investment strategy or lending strategy that's in place in there, but we can certainly detail that out easily enough. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, well, okay, so I am concerned, let's say. So I'm not concerned about this particular year, 25-26, that's fine, happy to sign that off. But in subsequent years, 27-28, 28-29, we're looking at a deficit running into hundreds of thousands from this authority. And it says here at 6.3, as constituent councils, both Devon County Council and Torbay, have a statutory duty, blah, 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 to ensure that the costs of the combined county that are reasonably attributable to the third are met. In other words, we are underwriting as a body, as Devon County Council, we would be underwriting the CCA. And I've made clear right from the start that I'm not prepared for Devon County Council taxpayers to be funding this organisation until we see some tangible benefits from it. So I'm okay with this year. Next year, I will not be signing this off if it includes funding from the county council. Torbay may take a different view, but that's my view from the county council, and I just need to make that clear. I'm also I'm also very concerned about the 200,000+ that we're spending for the external auditors. Has there been a drop in equivalent to the external auditors at county or Torbay? I don't think so. Therefore, I can't see why it's justified. My view is that we don't do it. We don't have an external audit until they charge us a reasonable amount of money. We get given 390,000 by government. More than half of that, 215,000, is being spent on an external audit. If ever you wanted to see a case of complete and utter nonsense within local government and government, there it is. You set up a thing, you give it some money, and then they have to pay that out to an external auditor to check that it's okay. Again, I find it very hard to sit on a body that's doing that sort of thing. We were told that the combined county authority was all about devolution, it was all about extra funding, it was all about a pathway to a mayoral, it was all about that, and that has turned into complete and utter bunkum. It's done exactly the opposite. Decisions are taken at a higher level from county and things. We've got no extra money to talk of whatsoever, notwithstanding the strategic place thing that we're doing, and then in fact all that's happened is that we're spending money on more bureaucracy and delivering very little, and I'm not happy with that, and I wish the government was here and I could tell them straight to their face, because it's a shambles, if you ask me.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. There's a few points raised. I'd like to respond to a couple, and then I'm going to invite the Chief Executive to respond. Certainly, 2028, 29, reality is Torbay, for example. I know we've got to find £20 million worth of cuts. I'm sure Devon will be in a similar position, but we've not got there yet. We will have a plan by the time we get there, but I can't tell you today what that is going to look like. We have had some conversation regarding the setting of the fees, how they were set, and an update on that would be helpful. And also, I think, an update on some of the regulatory conditions regarding audit to inform the board, I think would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come in and seek to reassure all members on both points. So in terms of future funding of the CCA, whilst we are all disappointed in the settlement and the small sums that were allocated through that, our lobbying efforts are continuing. Both the Director of Operations and myself have met with MHCLG officials on a number of occasions already, and we are aware that they know of the challenge for us and are seeking solutions, but we don't have those yet. The next opportunity to raise that with them, we do have the Combined Authority annual conversation taking place next month, and they've indicated that we can have that conversation further with them on that occasion. So efforts continue to raise the issues of future funding and adequate future funding of the CCA. On the specific element of the auditing, just this morning I've asked that Matthew arrange an escalation call for me with the PSAA to challenge them further in terms of the costs that they are charging us, whilst also exploring what the options are to come out of the PSA appointment, so that actually we can take a different decision as we go forward. Matthew will correct me, but I don't believe we have a choice other than to be audited in terms of it. The decision of this board was to appoint PSAA to make that appointment. What I've asked for, though, is that we now consider what is the earliest point at which we could extract ourselves from those arrangements. That would mean, members, that we have to undertake our own procurement to do so, and we've talked about actually there is a firm within Devon that might be able to approach in that regard, which would also help, you know, the local economy in that respect also. But it's absolutely something, members, that we are not accepting and are pursuing.
Any Councillor Long?
It was just on the point that Councillor Brazil raised in terms of if there was likely to be a requirement for the authorities below us to underwrite, when would that likely decision need to be made in terms of whether we decide to do that or not? Chair.
So in essentially, if we were to be reporting an in-year financial pressure, I would expect decisions would need to be made in year to manage that and reduce that down. As Councillor Brazil said, next year we are forecasting to be able to operate within those financial means. The year after, there's still a lot that's got to come out to play in terms of government funding, programme delivery, timings of funding, that kind of thing. If in year, it'd be much like Devon County or Torbay Council would need to respond to those pressures and make decisions around what they were going to do or not to do as part of that budget setting if we are to continue in that way, because as you say, it's not a sustainable position to be in.
Councillor Lewis?
Sorry, I can't remember. When we made the decision to go with PSA, did we get an estimate of what the costs would be? Because normally you don't buy into something unless you know roughly what it's going to cost.
No, so what the way it works is that basically you have to acknowledge or you have to submit a request to join the PSAA audit awarding type framework from it. They will go out and then source a company that is able and willing to kind of audit your organisation. They will then do a scoping exercise based upon other peers in the sector, the grouping. So I suspect we've had that view of similar combined authorities, but obviously we're at a much earlier stage in our development than some of those others, and that's been the general kind of drive behind the discussion so far, is that we are relatively small and very not as complex as those other organisations around what we will be getting audited. In terms of the response to it, they will still do the same rigor, apply the same rigor accounting standards, but look at much smaller values in terms of the de minimis levels and thresholds that they'll audit us on.
Thank you. Alan?
I've appointed a fair number of auditors. I don't want to repeat what Councillor Brazil said, but I'm amazed at the size of the number for the size of the money we're actually going to be spending. I would be really interested to see what comes out of the scoping exercise. And if you want somebody who's got a slightly outside the public sector view of what an audit should look like, please include me in the process, because I have appointed a fair number of auditors in my time. And that number should be about, I don't know, a tenth what it is.
Thank you. Councillor Five-Cook?
I think what concerns me is, besides the amount of money we're talking about, is the message we're sending out. If we're asking other authorities to put their hands in their pockets, possibly to subsidise us, if I was one of those authorities, the first question I'd ask might be impolite, but are we value for money? Have we done due diligence, or have we allowed ourselves to be probably paying more than we should do? And that's what concerns me in the future. I don't think about money coming into the CCA. I think that's just a long-term thing, and I just think it will eventually come. But I do feel that we've got to safeguard the lower authorities. Otherwise, we're not going to get support from them. Thank you.
And so a clear view around the table, and actually was here previously, is around the fees that PSAA are looking to impose on us for that audit. We've heard there's one piece of work going on there. Can I request that this comes back as an update at the next board meeting, so we can understand how the negotiations have gone and potentially how we move forward in the more positive light that members around the table are looking to go. Yeah, hopefully that captures the conversation. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Just to check with Matt, and I think that's really helpful, Chair, what you've just suggested. There is obviously concern, Matt, isn't there, around committing to, we're noting the indicative capital budgets for 27, 28, 28, 29. So, and I think Councillor Brazil's point is, no, can't mean commit, can it, at this stage? What we're just sort of saying, well, there it is. And as you said, Matt, through you, Chair, forgive me for my voice. You said there's a lot, there's moving parts, there's all sorts of stuff. Who knows what, who can report what? So, but as long as that's clearly understood that we're noting that, we're not committing to spend that, we don't come back this time next year and somebody said, oh no, we said we do that, because we haven't. And I hope that's clear in the recommendations.
Okay, can we have confirmation for Councillor Arnott?
Members, just to confirm, it is noting, it is not agreeing. It is purely noting the projections at this point. It will come back before you for agreement. Okay,
Thank you for the conversation and the debate. I think we're probably ready to move to the vote. This requires majority of constituent council members and both lead members. So all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. And item 5 is approved. We move on to something very new for us to discuss this afternoon, which is the spatial development strategy, and invite Matt. Thank you. You're way at the back of the room. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at the paper. I'll go through it and then we can have a discussion about that. So spatial development strategies, just a reminder for members, our government is hoping to cover the entirety of the country in spatial development strategies, and they're looking to combined authorities to become a strategic planning authority to take those forward. This paper sort of sets out where we are on that. So a spatial development strategy is designed to link housing growth, economic growth, infrastructure, nature recovery across a broader area than local plans currently do. They are not meant to be site-specific type documents, but indicate broad areas of growth. And eventually, when the timing comes right, local plans will conform to spatial development strategies, but clearly at the moment the timings are not quite right, so that will come in time with regular reviews. So spatial development strategies will be developed and should cover a time period of up to 20 to 30 years with reviews every 5 years. This paper sets out where we are on that and asks the board to note the current consultation on geography for a spatial development strategy, agree to take updates at regular intervals over the next 3 years as a spatial development strategy is should be produced by 2029. Support us establishing some interim governance arrangements to ensure that all local planning authorities that are not constituent members, for example, of the CCA, are have meaningful participation in the process, and also endorse us to use our initial funding from MHCLG to start to look at the preparatory work. So on geography, you'll be aware the consultation closed last week, and we submitted a response around geography that should look at an SDS over a peninsular basis. We're one of the areas that are listed as not yet agreed on the consultation, and we think a peninsular one would be helpful, but at least a Devon, Torbay and Plymouth one together. Government are due to respond to that consultation in June or July in the summer. We'll talk about governance. The governance will depend a little on the geography. So if multiple authorities are involved, then something called a strategic planning board will be established by legislation in the summer. And that's how that will be the main form of governance there. But in the interim, we need to ensure that there is some process put in place. And local planning authorities need to be involved in that from an early status. We're also bringing together planning directors or directors of place across the Devon and Torbay area, and we'll invite Plymouth as well. We've getting a meeting set up in the next month for that, and that's a really important part of our work on this. Government have given us some support to start taking this forward. So as well as employing the Planning Advisory Service to produce a really helpful toolkit for all combined authorities and regular network meetings to provide that sort of peer support, which is really interesting monthly get together of combined authorities and strategic planning authorities. They've also provided us with, as you'll see in the paper, £414,000 as an initial amount to start preparatory work on this. Government has suggested that following the determination of the geography in the summer, they will then look at a future settlement taking us through to 2029, which will be quite considerable. So we're currently developing a proposal of what to use that initial tranche of money for, and that's around project management and planning expertise to get the process going, stakeholder engagement and communication, which is a really important part of developing spatial plans. Obviously, government have indicated that spatial development strategy should be digitally based and should use link into central digital resources that they're providing. So we'll need to look at some digital preparedness, and a key bit is data and evidence, and we'll be doing as well as trying to do an audit, for example, of local plans where they will ask, so we can understand where in the process everyone is. We'll be looking at what data and evidence is required, what's already available, where we'll need more, and what we'll need to put into that. So that's a bit of a brief run through. In conclusion, it's a key area of work for the combined authority over the next three and a bit years, and it's a really important opportunity. There's been general positivity about the need for a broad spatial development strategy across the area, alongside obviously concerns over its complexity and sort of integration with current spatial planning. But broadly positive support for that. And this is a really good opportunity for us to highlight the alignment of economic, housing, infrastructure, nature recovery, and almost promote our area for inward investment and show that we're ready for that. So I'll leave it there and we can discuss.
Thank you, Matt. I've got a host of questions myself, but in order to bring these onto the table, we need a proposer and a seconder to do that. Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Five Cook, seconded by Councillor Lewis. So if I can jump straight in with a number of questions. So I think this is great for our region. Obviously, a bit disappointing we're going to have to wait till June, July to find out what the area looks like. But I think we can't underestimate the amount of work that's going to be required to get this piece of work correct. And I think it's also really important that we take everybody on the journey, recognising that it is a piece of work over 3 years. We all know within our own local authorities, local plans, how long they take and how important it is for members, community to go on the journey rather than something just appear at the very end. So I guess 2 questions to start with. The Strategic Planning Board, what does that look like in terms of potential makeup, so we can understand that? And what is the kind of programme line coming back, feeding back into this board level? Just trying to understand, because hopefully it won't be a case of we approve the Strategic Planning Board, they go off and 3 years later you receive a document. So just talk me through that a little bit, please.
Sure. So the Strategic Planning Board is a statutory board that would be set up if government decide that the geography for our SDS is broader than just us. If it's just us, then I think the CCA board would act as that strategic planning board. If we're Devon, Torbay and Plymouth, then clearly Plymouth will be on that board, and Cornwall if it were to go for the full peninsula. So that's how the strategic planning board would be made up. Not certain of exact members yet, but it would be member focus board, and it would be set up in statute. Each area that has a strategic planning board would have a piece of secondary legislation to confirm that. So clearly that's part of the reason the Housing Advisory Group put forward the recommendation here about supporting the establishment of interim governance that includes all of the local planning authorities within our area, because for it to be meaningful, then everyone needs to contribute. So that's we'd like to try and set something up around that, certainly in the meantime, but that will run through anyway, because if a strategic planning board is just constituent members as here, then it will need that local planning authority input as well. So that's how that will look. Again, we'll certainly know more in June, July, summer, I think was the word that was used.
And I guess really getting into the detail, it might need to wait, but clearly along the journey, there's going to be some difficult areas that maybe a local plan either approved or emerging. I guess emerging would be present more problems that clashes with the SDS, whereas the SDS says we recognise this is going to look like this. So in terms of hierarchy, where does what sit? Do we have any idea at the moment yet where that sits?
So not fully, I would say. However, there are different areas taking it in different ways. There has been some suggestion that an SDS should just be almost an agglomeration of current local plans, but that doesn't necessarily work, and isn't really the idea behind a broader spatial development strategy that has the ability to move housing distribution around. So it should be more that. But part of the work we do when we almost audit what's happening with each local plan, we'll be looking at how we kind of work through that. I'd like to be able to say exactly what's going to happen now, but it's very difficult, and that's why we're really keen to establish our directors of place group, which will be all sort of directors across the area, and the governance around local planning authorities that's mentioned here. And we will, your comment on a programme line, when we have that initial bit of resource set up to do a programme plan, I think we'll be able to map out quite well when it comes to this board, where it goes, at what point, and the kinds of decisions that will need to be made at each of those points. So I think we're slightly early at the moment to say that, but we will definitely come back.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's move across to Councillor Long.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned in your earlier comments that there's a monthly get-together of combined authorities. That sounds like a particularly exciting treat, and I'm only jealous that I'm not part of it.
I'm sure I can send you an invite.
Please don't. I couldn't control my excitement. The question though that's linked to Councillor Thomas's question. So we have a spatial development strategy, and we are a growth area, say. What implication does that have for the local area and their in terms of the impact on a local plan?
Well, ultimately, local plans should conform to the spatial development strategy, is the way it should. That's the idea set out in the MPPF, the consultation that came through, the planning hierarchy from neighbourhood plans, local plans, spatial development strategy, MPPF. So there should be conformity there. We'll have to work collaboratively to get in the right place with those as we sort of come into the right timescales, if you know what I mean, so that they're able to do that. And a series of reviews for all of those are part of the programme plan that we'll be doing, certainly for SDSs, but local plans will be being reviewed very regularly. So almost like one of the other ones, can't give an exact answer yet, but that is the hierarchy that will be planned.
Such fun.
Thank you very much. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. So when I, as a leader, received the letter from, I think it was Matthew Pennicock last week or the week before about these, you got to do one of these. I just thought, oh God, what's something else? Are you serious? So we had a meeting chaired by Councillor James of the Devon Districts Forum on Friday, and we talked about this there and how the districts felt about this. And honestly, there's no capacity. There's no capacity. The directors of place, and this isn't the criticism of you, Matt, you know it already. The directors of place are already busting a gut if they're not doing local plans. They're up to their necks in local government reorganisation. They've just got the consultation responses in. That doesn't mean that's off their desks. Far from it. There's other stuff they're probably, or they are certainly having to war game around likely outcomes. As far as I can see, the essence of the report is that there's about 400 grand coming in, and it helps us to start some work. So the question, Matt, is, are the districts going to be asked to put in financial resource as well at this stage? And do you think, well, no, that's the question. Thank you.
No, not at this stage, I don't think. No. We're using that money, or we hope to use that money to set out exactly how we want to take this forward. Now, there's various ways we could get resource to do that, and that's what we're going to have to plan. And you're right, I know there's difficulties in capacity, but there has also been acknowledgements that this is actually an important piece of work, and from our constituent councils here, Devon, Torbay, and the districts have also, said that they want to make sure that they're fully involved, engaged, and we'll see where the expertise that they hold can help us to do this. And we'll have to be not creative. I don't think creative is the word, but we will have to be a little bit in how we get that expertise at the right time. And when we set out our programme plan to do that, I really hope we can identify that over the next 3 years. And there will be extra resource from government. It's been indicated there will, once we have the geography sorted.
Thanks, Matt. And I suppose as a comment rather than the question, Chair, really, while we, this isn't Iran, so it isn't as challenging as that. But Cornwall are very, very, very clear about their position in the Southwest Peninsula at the moment, and that's fine. That's up to them. And the rest of us, in terms of local government reorganisation, we're awaiting something. We're awaiting to see whether Plymouth will come and join us at some point. It's an opportunity for me to remind any members who were around at the time that in a period of time when the CCA was being set up and there was a possible change of leadership at Plymouth from Conservative back to Tudor, I actually wrote to the current chief executive of Plymouth naively as just a minnow, East Devon leader, what would happen if the governance, if the leadership changes at Plymouth, would Plymouth pull out of the CCA? And I've got the email, absolutely not, So I'm kind of once bitten, twice shy around all this stuff. And it's a lot of money, and I'm really worried about us committing it when we just don't know where this is going to land. I really take your point, Matt, that you have to do it. And also we have been ordered by the government to make some progress with it. But I wouldn't want us to burn through too much of the 400 grand yet, buy some tea bags and stuff and, get some stuff out of the library or, bring in all the local plans, start doing a review. But I suppose the question to you and perhaps to Sean as well is, even within the CCA, have we got the capacity to lead on this right now? Because I know, we're not exactly over-resourced.
So I've got Sean, who's indicated, then Councillor Lewis, and then Donna. My apologies, and then Councillor Prycock.
Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor Arnott. So I think a few points, but the first one is, as Matt's alluded to, actually, the initial tranche of funding for the SDS is around providing some resource to be able to answer some of the questions that are being asked by members today. So questions around governance, questions around geography, questions around capacity and operating model, how you would do it, because there are different ways in which you could resource an SDS. You could could appoint some consultants, you could ask local planning authorities to be able to provide resources if they had capacity, or if you take the point that they don't, we could look to recruit our own relatively small planning team. But a lot of that depends on what the final geography is going to be, because that will then determine the amount of resource that's available over for the remainder of the period to do that. And just on the initial tranche of funding, it is not intended to spend any more money than is necessary, and not to spend on any money that would have to be redone if the geography was confirmed. So the way we've described this is that we would spend it on geography agnostic activity. So what would be the things that you would have to do anyway: stakeholder engagement, governance, who might you work with, what type of resources would you need, but not going into a big sort of detailed evidence base, where you might then have to change that evidence base if it then transpired that Plymouth and Cornwall, for example, were being included. So there's a hopefully a sensible approach that's been taken to how we go about it. And the reason why we're bringing the report to members today is to almost get your endorsement to be able to go away and do the work now that needs to be done, to be able to say this is how we're intending to resource it, and this is how we're intending to proceed. And part of that is geography dependent, as you've alluded to, Councillor.
Thank you. Got Councillor Lewis next then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually have a portfolio for strategic planning at Torbay, and we've just had our Regulation 18 consultation. I'm more upbeat. I think the STS is something that we really need, and we need it even more so with reorganisation. We need that top level going down. The nuts and bolts of it will come out of it at the end, hopefully. It's a bit like the previous agenda item. It's all new to us. Hopefully the government will support us. It's one of their flagships. Therefore, doing the work that we have to do now to get the nuts and bolts right is so important. And we as Torbay, however reorganisation comes out, will welcome this to cover whichever region. I mean, I think we might struggle to get Cornwall to sign up to it. I think that might be a step too far. But even if it's just the Devon area, bring Plymouth in, it's a plus. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Donna.
I'm really concerned about what was raised about capacity. As I'm happy to get it circulated, Chair, as part of today, but there was a Truth About Local Government publication on Friday following the announcements last week, and it's quite clear there is not the capacity and the capability in local government to do all these things at once. It's just not there unless you have to start funding consultants. And I know from the organisation I work in, the political leadership, that is the last thing we want to do as part of all these changes, because they're not sustainable changes and you don't get the growth and our residents and our staff in Devon by paying 3 times the price to do a job, or when you've got local staff and local members who know what the job is to be done. So I think the board seriously has to stand up here and say this is just not possible without greater clarity on what the route map to all these things are. When we started this a few years ago, been right from the beginning, it was clear that there was a route map in our strategic mayoral authority. All the original discussions that we were part of, it was all about that route map. That route map's now gone with no clarity about what it looks like. And I think this is another route map, and it's a 20-year route map, as housing delivery should be, but it's a 20-year route map without any of the key milestones in place. And I think there is something about, we hear about the Team Plymouth and the defence deal, it's huge in terms of local planning for the whole of the peninsula. We've got family first reforms, a 10-year NHS health plan, and now we have this place transformation on top. But I just do not think there is the capacity at this moment in time without clearer guidance. And I think the board should seriously consider what response we put back to government in terms of timelines, because I think everybody's absolutely ambitious to do this. But we're not going to be able to do it in a best value way with that level of funding. As per a discussion earlier where we heard from private sector that, you know, some of the costs in local government are just astronomical, and not acceptable in terms of what the residents of the peninsula would be looking for. So I can't agree with the fact that there's capability to do this in local government at the moment, in light of what was announced last week, because actually in terms of national government family, they're stretched at the moment, and that view that there will be civil servants there to support us with this work, that's just not true at this moment in time. We just need to speak to our colleagues who are ahead of us in phase one of the DPP, and there is not the capability nationally. So local government will have to do these things on their own. There isn't that level of support available.
Matt, could you give us a response to capacity and capability, please, in the region?
Well, it is obviously it's a concern. I totally take that. I can't. I mean, this is something that we've been asked to do by government. I think until we get an understanding exactly what that looks like, then we can put that case back to government for any settlement that's due post the announcement of the geography that they'd like to see us work to. And this initial funding could give us the opportunity to try and do that. And maybe there would have to be some consultant use early in the process. I don't know. Until we can set it out, it's difficult for us to say exactly. But like I say, there's been other positive responses from areas about helping in this process and wanting to see it succeed. So I haven't got a list of the capacity and capability here with me now, but I understand it's a concern and everyone's concerned about it. But I also think that we can start to look at it through using this money that we've been allocated to do so.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just ask the Chief Executive to comment on this one, and then we'll move on? My apologies for holding you up.
So, Chairman, absolutely understand the concerns around capacity. What's being asked for, though, is that first stage approval to allow us to go and explore and discuss and consider all of those options as to how we take this forward. Clearly, within that timescale, we'll also get the notification as to the geography, which allows those conversations to be furthered, but actually to come back to you in a very informed way in terms of how we take it forward thereafter, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Fife Cook.
I always think it's wise to try and reach beyond your grasp, but it worries me slightly here. If we only look at local plans, I remember when we did one in a parish and it cost us £10,000, and we're talking about a tiny little parish. 400,000 pounds really, in reality, only scratches the surface, I feel. And the plan, SDS, will only be worth the amount of information we get out of it and the benefit of moving forward. So I would say, personally, I would think it was a good idea that we obviously do it. But if we're going to do it, we've got to do it correctly. And I think that that's going to cost us a great deal of money. I don't know whether we have any idea of the end costs that we might be looking at here. And I also agree with Donna. I think that the fact is we can end up paying. Thank you.
Sean's just indicated that he'd like to come in on that one.
Chair and Councillor Park, just a few things to say. So just to reaffirm to members that this is an initial tranche of funding, and the CCA's consultation response for spatial development is that, given the funding constraints and capacity constraints of the combined authority, that the requirement to produce a SDS should be fully funded by government. That was made explicitly clear in the consultation response that we submitted as part of the geography consultation. And secondly, I mean, MHLG have confirmed that there will be additional funding once our geography has been decided and determined, and you would expect that to run into many multiples of millions of pounds over the period. There isn't a final estimate yet on the precise amount, but I think we'll bring that back to members and to the wider board as we get the further detail. I would just reiterate, I think we think this is a very positive development for the combined authority and its ability to be able to engage with local planning authorities across a wider geography on the things that matter to people across Devon and Torbay, so infrastructure, energy, and so on. That's hopefully what the plan will be able to pick up to be.
And I would suggest, obviously, the work that the Combined County Authority does on the SDS is going to be at a different level to what's being done at districts, etc. It'll be building on that. Won't be a case of having to go back and do all of that work that's currently underway. Like, for example, within Torbay, we're hoping to get our local plan to submission stage by the end of December. Once that goes through the system, and depends on the date, what we've got, and the SDS looking at, is this a new plan? Has it been around for a long time? They'll be able to add some weight. So I'm not clearly expecting any of that kind of costs to have to be borne again. And I think if you look at the documentation from government on what the SDS is, it's a much more strategic, high level, just sitting immediately under the NPPF as being, there's a blob, that's like a growth area, that road, that transport hub. It's very much more high level, and it's which allows the local plans to still have that detail that's required, and furthermore, those neighbourhood plans that sit underneath the local plan to have that granular detail. So as you move up, the whole idea is that it gets more strategic. I think, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I suppose what we're asked to decide here is around the recommendations, aren't we? And the recommendations, notwithstanding the discussion that's been had, I think it's been incredibly helpful to air all this about capacity, and be in no doubt, if there was a recommendation here that involved us actually committing district councils, county council time and combined county authority time, it doesn't exist. It does not exist, and we shouldn't pretend it does. Now, each of us as leaders, and there are a number of leaders in the room, have had the letter from Matthew Pennycock asking us to get stuck into this, and we individually can write back to him and say, thank you for this. We should just alert you to the fact that the timetable of this right now is it doesn't make a lot of sense. But we're noting, we're noting that you're asking us to do this. But I think looking at the actual recommendations that have been drafted, I am able to vote for those as long as the room has heard, and I think we have all heard, this is just tiny baby steps. This is just collating information, getting the theoretical governance arrangements in place. But my God, there are some warnings in this document as well about if we don't do it effectively, or if we can't bring other people in, the government will set something up themselves. And we know, as Donna just said, we must realise this. MHCLG is falling apart at the moment. It clearly is. It's quite clear around issues of LGR that it is pushing miles ahead of other serious considerations. For example, Department of Education, really serious statutory consultants. It's a very politically led moment at the moment. So, we just have to sit by the stream and watch that happen. But I'm happy with the recommendations, Chair, at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we've had a really good debate around this subject. I think we're probably ready to move to the vote. So in order for it to be approved, just as a reminder, it needs the majority of constituent council members, and it needs both lead members for the constituent councils to be voting in favour. So moving to the vote, all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed. Item 6 is approved. Moving on to item 7, which is the Local Transport Authority operating arrangements for 26-27, and invite Sean to present.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we have brought various reports on transport or the Combined Authority exercising, autonomously exercising local transport authority powers from the 1st of April, which is, as I mentioned earlier, Wednesday this week. And the report sort of sets out that the operating model that the board has previously determined for 26-27 is that transport arrangements largely operate as they were with both constituent councils teams responsible for example, the reimbursement of concessionary fares, the operation of subsidised bus services, and so on. And so therefore the governance that is required to bring into effect the Combined Authority becoming the local transport authority in its own right on Wednesday is set out in this report. And what we've done is detailed by public transport functions, which generally relates to bus related activity, and then non-public transport related functions, so things like the capital programme, transport strategy, the local transport plan, and so on, and detailed in the annexes exactly all of those different functions, how it operates today. And there's a slight, it's mostly consistent, but there are some nuances between how Devon County and how Torbay operate as individual authorities. What we think that means from a governance perspective from Wednesday, and whether there is a change that's proposed or not, or no change at all, and then what we think the direction of travel is. So we're trying to bring some absolute clarity to the governance arrangements that will exist based on the operating model that the board has previously agreed, and that's what's set out in the report for members to consider today. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm happy to propose this one from the chair and look for a seconder in the room. Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Let's open up to any debate. I think this one's quite straightforward. Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to sort of by way of sort of hypothetical question is that at the moment, and we've got the capital programme there and everything, everyone's agreed, both Devon and Torbay are agreed on it. What happens when there's disagreement about where the funding should go? You know, Devon may feel it should come to a strategic priority and project that they've got, and Torbay thinks exactly the opposite, that, you know, it should come to Torbay and do that. And I just wonder how we would resolve that impasse.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I mean, transport is a reserved matter for the board, so it requires the consent of both lead members, i.e. both yourself, Councillor Brazil, and Councillor Thomas at the moment. So, I mean, ultimately, the design and develop the approach that the transport teams at both constituent councils have taken, given that, you know, there is now a single capital programme rather than two separate capital programmes, is to develop a multi-criteria sort of assessment framework which looks at, you know, various different aspects of a capital scheme, you know, its effect on journey times, how much it costs, the availability of resources, whether there's other funding that's also contributing to it. It might be Section 106 of the locally raised revenue. And then there's a prioritisation exercise that would happen as a result of that. And we set that out in the next report. I suppose the short answer to the question is we need to get agreement from both councils of the programme, and if there was a disagreement, then we would need to be able to work with you to be able to resolve that within the parameters that we had available to us, notwithstanding the fact that any decision relating to transport capital and transport requires the consent of both lead members.
So, Chair, if I may, just to confirm what Mr Anstey has said, that where there is no agreement by both lead members and those constituent members, then there would be no decision taken, and it would be a direction from this board for us to go back and relook at it to get us to a place where we were in agreement. But as Sean has set out, that framework and that prioritisation is the key element to this, to try and get us to that place. But in the absence of an agreement, there is no decision.
I think that's pretty clear. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman. Isn't it, in the past, we've always worked very closely with Devon, so it has been a sort of Torbay Devon transport plan going forward, and we've always come to an agreement. I think we need to be a bit more positive.
I take it that Councillor Brazil's question was basically just on the very rare occasion that it may happen, But I take on board what you're saying, but you've had the response directly from the monitoring officer and our director of operations, councillor. Thank you. Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, but just to follow that up. I mean, of course, at that stage, we had our own separate capital pots. So it wasn't a case of you're spending my money or I'm spending yours. And therefore, there was no disagreement. You're absolutely right. We did indeed. We've done it for many, many years. Produced a strategic transport plan across Devon and Torbay together. But as I say, there were two separate capitals pots. Devon would spend theirs, Torbay would spend theirs. You know, we're fine at the moment, but I see it, and I think we should be aware of it and understand how the mechanics of it might work. If there is disagreement about where capital should be spent in the region, you know, at the moment, you know, we'd come to an impasse and we wouldn't get the grant funding from government probably, which would be a crying shame. But anyway, I just think we should be aware of it. That's a possibility, that when everything's fine, that's okay. But when it's not, we need to understand that there are risks here associated with this. I mean, it's actually why Plymouth pulled out of the CCA, because they didn't want to give up their transport capital pot to a decision that was taken by this body rather than them themselves. So, you know, there's a good practical reason as to, you know, the issues that they saw, and that's why they pulled out.
But as you know, Plymouth, we are actively having that conversation with Plymouth, and they may well be sat around this table, you know, in the foreseeable future. Alan.
I'm just curious about how no decision would work in practice. Does that mean if there's no decision, we just stop spending money full stop?
It would effectively mean there would be no decision on that particular item, and there would have to be, you would have to ultimately sit in a room until you thrash it out, or create a workaround one way or another so that you could actually get to the end point.
Yes, because sometimes it's either or. So.
Indeed. Okay, I'm not seeing any further hands for any questions or debate, so we shall move to the vote. Again, this is majority of constituent council members, with both lead members being in favour. So all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 8, which is the Transport Capital Programme and the draft local transport plan. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, I mean, this report builds on that discussion that members were just having. So, I think we advised the January board of the multi-year funding settlement that was received by the CCA from the Department for Transport just prior to Christmas, and that does set out confirmed capital and revenue allocations for the CCA as the local transport authority between now and 2030 for revenue and 2031 for capital. But a requirement of that funding was that we were required to submit a draft local transport delivery plan, which indicates where we might expect to use that funding, because when the funding was announced, a lot of the ring fencing that previously existed, so in relation to highways, active travel, local authority bus grant and so on, was removed, and therefore DfT required us to be able to set out a draft plan. And that draft plan is included in Appendix 2 of the report. There is a final submission that's required in September. So there is a period now between now and September where actually both teams at both constituent councils have developed the proposals actually based on the local transport plan, which was approved by the board last year. So there's nothing, there shouldn't be any surprises in what's in the plan, because it's based on what was set out in the local transport plan that has been adopted. And then equally at the same time, we've taken the opportunity to develop a consolidated transport capital programme. Members might see that the amounts in the capital programme may be slightly higher than the amounts that have been confirmed by DfT, and that's because the capital programme typically is over-programmed in case there's any slippage of any schemes throughout the year. So we want to make sure that we spend the full allocation of money. And also the way in which capital schemes are funded is from a myriad of different sources. So some of that will be what is now DTCCA funding, some of it will be Section 106 funding, and some of it may well be locally raised revenue that both constituent councils want to contribute. So in line with the previous report, where we set out that once the scheme is ready to be approved, depending on the value of that scheme, that will either come back to the board for approval, or if it's below £500,000, will be delegated to both constituent councils. And therefore, what we're setting out is the capital programme for 26-27, and then that draft plan up until 2030 in line with the funding requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Sean. Do I have a proposer for this? Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Brazil and Councillor Arnott to second. Thank you. Let's move into questions or debate. Any comments? And to pick up on Alan's point then, to go to the vote, and this is where it needs the majority of the constituent members and both lead members to agree. If at this particular point I decided that I was not going to agree this, all of the Clumpton scheme and Appendix 1 and the millions of pounds that are wrapped up into all of this would simply not go ahead. And I think that's what you were referring to just a moment ago. Obviously, it would be absolutely crass for me to make such a decision, and I can assure you that I will not be taking that kind of decision. But it does indicate how important it is for both lead members, because that responsibility sits both ways. You know, and it's about agreement, it's about partnership working, it's about relationships. Oh, you want to come back, Councillor Arnott?
Well, only because opportune moment, Chair, perhaps to say that there may be 3 lead members coming up, possibly if things go well.
Indeed,
so that'll be even. Your point will be even more pertinent.
Yes, absolutely. Let's move to the vote then. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed, and that is approved. We move on to item 9 then, which is the Adult Skills Funding Commissioning Plan. And unfortunately, Phil is not able to be with us today, so we invite Kerry to present. Thank you very much indeed.
No problem at all. So hopefully this is a straightforward report. It refers to the Adult Skills Fund and the approach that's being recommended. You can read the recommendations. I won't review those for you. It focuses on the readiness of the DTCCA through its service level agreement with Devon County Council to be able to receive the Adult Skills Fund for academic year 26-27. It also sets out the process that we have underway for an adult skills framework, which is more than just the Adult Skills Fund. It includes other skills activities such as Train for Tomorrow that the County Council leads on. The framework's being set up so it's available to all local authorities, including Plymouth, and it's obviously available to the DTCCA to implement its funding through. As a framework, it will test the quality of providers across the region. We have chosen to subdivide the framework into geographic locations, but also by types of skills activity. And we have also taken the decision to ensure that we allow for additional funding to come through. So there is opportunity to add to the scope of the framework. So once established for 3 years with the opportunity to extend for 2, that procurement work will obviously stand the test of time for alternative funding to come forward. The way the framework would operate is once providers are popped onto the framework for the various lots and the various courses and skills that we've asked for, we will then run mini competitions, so we make sure that we do derive good value for money. We've set the threshold of 65% for the quality to come onto the framework, which we felt was very important to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our employers. We also have mandated that anyone who wants to come onto the framework will provide support for care leavers in some substantive way to fulfil our corporate parenting responsibilities and duties. So I think I'll pause there. Happy to take any questions. I don't know if Lawrence wants to add anything, because this obviously has been developed and discussed within the Skills and Employment Advisory Group.
Absolutely, indeed. I just want to bring it onto the table, and then I was going to invite you absolutely first. So a proposer and a seconder for this. Councillor Long, happy to propose? Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Five Cook to second. Thank you. And at that point, let's invite Lawrence to give us his words of wisdom.
Not sure about words of wisdom. I think from the point of view of the Skills Employment Advisory Group, the framework has been structured really well. Kerry set it out really clearly. The quality piece is really important. The ability to call off in the future is really important. I think the strategic proposal to ensure that the existing skills ecosystem continues with stability is really important as well, because there is a number of very high quality providers in the area, and it's critical that they continue, I think, to be able to deliver against the priorities. I'm quite excited about it. I think devolution of skills is a real opportunity for all of us to be able to do things differently, and to really to be able to meet needs. I think there are some challenges in there, which we've talked about at SEAG. So trying to combine a place-based locality approach, whilst continuing to develop a modern, forward, digitally based delivery model is going to be quite challenging. But nevertheless, that's something we've got to do. And I think we should also be really positive about the inclusive approach that Kerry also touched on as well, because making sure that everyone has access to skills. And then finally, of course, skills is going to underpin lots of things that we've talked about today, not least the kind of the spatial development plan, making sure we've got the right people in the right place as those investments come into the area. So I think we've had a lot of discussions around this as a SEAG. There's other things that will play into it that make it exciting as the new LSIP comes into play as well, may allow us to respond differently. So I think the group is very positive, but as always, there are some challenges, but I think we've got the framework allows us to respond really well to those.
First, I'm going to shout out to Victon College, where Kerry and I were this morning, and actually absolutely fantastic to see young people out on the construction site doing construction work, and they were talking about the aspiration for the new town, and yeah, I feel from them in the future. But it was so fantastic to see such innovative skills happening, and also to hear about the fantastic open day they had for SEND in terms of additional opportunities to work with our most vulnerable children. So I suppose my question, being very worried about our NEET young people and our educated at home young people in the peninsula, is actually where in the procurement will those young people be a priority? Because what I saw today was an opportunity to expand provision and a provider that's doing a fantastic job with our most vulnerable young people, and actually in the kind of skills that we saw today that young people really want to get into in a much broader way. So I'm interested, is that going to be a priority, and will we be able to track that improvement? So equally excited about it, but a fantastic opportunity to make sure that those opportunities go to the most vulnerable.
So absolutely, Donna. The lots include all the technical skills that we know our businesses require. They also include generic skills that our businesses require, whether it's program management, whether it's IT, whether it's good communications and marketing. But we have put aside a very specific lot to look after the inclusion and the employability skills, which is absolutely about confidence building, not necessarily qualification based, agility to respond to young people's needs across the county. So it's geographic and it's also specific for inclusion. So it's very much been accommodated. We will have to wait and see how the market responds to that particular lot. But through the market engagement, we know that we have a lot of small local providers who do fantastic outreach in their communities, fantastic work to support those that can fall down in the education system and have different learning requirements. So we're fairly confident that we will get a good response from the market. To pick up Lawrence's point around digital, we have set out in the procurement that we would like to do face-to-face learning, mainly because the risk for us is that we could get a lot of national digitally based colleges if we hadn't specified that. That doesn't preclude local providers coming forward with digital solutions. So if there's a clarification question posed, now the procurement is live, we would be happy to assure all providers, South Devon College included, that that is what is meant by it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to thank Lawrence and all those who've worked in the background and officers from CCA for bringing this forward and developing this far. It's very welcome indeed. Chair, you would expect me not to miss the opportunity, since my Chief Executive Devon mentioned Malcolm, to give you an update on that, because it does actually apply. Yes, it is absolutely the case that the kind of skills that we need in this area they're diverse, but they are absolutely in the high skills in the construction sector as well. There's also no doubt that those are the jobs that many young people would prefer to going on to more formal higher education, Russell Group and so forth. So a little bit of a news flash, if it's of any interest. I think the New Towns announcement was made, it feels like 10 years ago. I think it was this time last week. I think by common consensus it was not very elegantly handled, and it looked like there were 7 towns that were going to get the dosh and everybody else was, don't know. So as you can imagine, Plymouth quite quickly identified themselves as being a sort of in a +1 category there. We've got a sort of, well, everything's going to be okay for us. So I'm pleased to say that East Devon have also had similar communications with MHCLG over the last few days. This will be enlarged upon East Devon Cabinet on Wednesday, and in fact Devon County Cabinet on Thursday, that Malcolm is still very much in the running. It just has to go a slightly more circuitous route, but the plan is for it to go ahead, and critically for it to go ahead with the governance arrangements proposed, which are that it is effectively civic-led and not developer-led as Cranbrook was. And forgive my, thank you for indulging me, Chair, on something it's not strictly to do with this question. But
thank you very much indeed. A big shout out to Malcolm, and I was surprised that he made an appearance on Adult Skills. But I've got Councillor Fivecook, followed by Councillor Brazil.
Obviously, adult education is a marvellous thing, but we are an incredibly rural county. How I know face-to-face is obviously much better, but how are we going to help those who are digitally challenged and also transport challenged? I mainly talk about North Devon here, where many people do not have a good internet connection. Is there any plan of thinking about possibly delivering some kind of internet service to a local library where people could go and pick it up from there, or are they going to be in the situation of having to come into a college which could take them 2 hours? Thank you.
So at the moment, the framework will look to test the quality and the ability of providers to be able to reach all the audiences that we are seeking. When we actually then put the mini competitions together, that is when the acid test comes in to address the point that you are making. It's really been a significant part of the work of the team to date to go out and engage with those sorts of providers that will book the village hall, that could use the library, that can do the outreach to make sure that they do reach those groups. And having set aside the lot specifically around inclusion, that is exactly what we anticipate being able to deliver. We also, through Learn Devon as an example, can do sort of the peripatetic approach where we actually take tutors out into the communities as well to provide the skills that are required. So it's not reliant on digital, it's not only reliant on face-to-face, it's not only going to be reliant in colleges.
Lawrence, is yours a separate point, or is it on building on this one?
I would just say that we've got a lot of innovation in Devon and Torbay, existing providers, including further education colleges. We're very good at responding to those needs and demands. And Kerry said earlier on in her initial presentation that there's a lot of excellent small providers, and I think that the solution will be working together so that there's very clear transition between providers. So initially it may be that some of those smaller providers will reach into those more difficult to reach communities and individuals, and as they develop those skills, that allows them in due course to have greater access, whether that's digitally or physically, and continue to progress through a skills escalation route. So I think there's some really great opportunities, and the flexibility to be able to design that delivery to meet the needs of Devon and Torbay and our geography. I think that's the exciting bit.
Thank you. Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's really sort of following on from what Donna and Michael said about our hard to reach young people. And I suppose the one thing about this is that I don't see any targets. You know, how will we know whether we are succeeding or not? Because it doesn't seem to be that within the paper. It's just we're going to do all this and it's going to be wonderful. Well, how do we know it's wonderful, and how can we tell if it's working? My view is that if we know that we've got some very stubborn needs in Devon, and my view would be that this is a success if we can get half of them into work or employment or training or whatever it is. And you know, I would like to see some smart targets there so that we understand whether this is actually working or not. But you know, from what Lawrence says, you know, it sounds exciting and that's great. But what worries me is we spend a lot of money doing what we've always done before, and we're not actually making that difference, which is what we need to do.
The framework is just that. It is almost to ensure that we have the right providers that are motivated, have the quality, have the approach and attitude that we're seeking. When we actually come to putting the money out to market through those providers, that's where it will be contracted in terms of exactly what we're seeking for the outputs, the contract measures, the KPIs, as you rightly referred to, Julian. It is also making sure that we hit and deliver the skills strategy that the DTCCA has set up. So we will want to ensure that we have this board, the CAG group, has absolute oversight on how well we are performing. Are we bringing those neat figures down? Are we raising inclusion levels? Have we been able to ensure that we've reached hard to hit community groups? So that comes next.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can you tell me, is this new money?
New to us, it's government's money that it would otherwise have determined how it allocated it, how it's spent against government priorities.
Well, it's extra to what I'm trying to get at, to help Councillor Brazil out. Is it an increase on what we got last year?
So the area would have had similar amount to last year. I can't tell you hand on heart what it was last year, but it wouldn't have been in our gift to have controlled and directed. From academic year September 2026, it is completely in this board's gift to ensure where that money goes and how it is spent and how it is allocated.
Thank you. So it's not new money, but we now have the control locally, so we can determine how that money is spent. So that's a bonus for CCA.
It's that money that comes from government that is being routed through the CCA. Yeah. And if you look at CCAs across the country and you look at our turnover in comparison to some of the others, which are much larger, which takes us back to the audit question, because at the moment we don't have all of those things coming through us. The trajectory, the direction of travel from government is that more and more of these will come through this board. Okay, thank you. I think we're probably ready to move to the vote. So moving to the vote, all those in favour, please indicate. And that is approved. Thank you very much indeed. Final item. So we'll try and get this one sorted, which is the strategic partnership with Great British Energy. Sean.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. So this is a relatively short but quite meaningful report actually that sort of sets out a relationship with GBE where they actually are only talking to areas that have strategic authorities, so combined county authorities or combined authorities, where they recently published the local clean power plan. And and have indicated to a number of different strategic authorities that they would like to work with, in partnership with us, to be able to bring forward a set of sort of clean power opportunities, and that there may well be funding either in grants or other forms that's available from their side to be able to support this. What we've sort of set out in the report is, because the CCA doesn't own any assets, the only way it would be able to enter into a partnership with GBE and then to enact it is to be able to work in close collaboration with each of the sort of public sector bodies across Devon and Torbay to be able to come up with a set of propositions. We know already that there is interest from a number of the different districts to be able to do this, and what we're seeking today is just the board's endorsement to be able to get on with developing that work and the programme, and then we'll bring back regular reports to you on how we're getting on. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to move this from the chair. Seconded, Councillor Brazil. Comments, questions? Alan, any views? From a business point of view? Can I ask you to switch your microphone on?
I guess from a business point of view, do we have any sense of how they are setting their priorities yet? Because from the political point of view, there have been biases towards some types of energy and away from others, which means that do we actually have much free will in the subject?
Just briefly, Chair. I mean, I think that's what we'll now develop with GBE, is how we bring into effect the memorandum. There's probably two things to consider. One, there'll be public sector buildings that may well benefit from clean energy type infrastructure. That might be leisure centres or any sort of other type of building. But there's also, across Devon and Torbay, there'll be business parks that are home to businesses. Then they too might benefit from sort of clean energy, and both are covered in the clean energy power plan that GBE have published. And so our members approve this today. Our job will be to come up with a set of proposals with GBE that are both public and private sector friendly.
Well, it includes something as mundane as access to the grid. Because one of the problems we have is you generate renewable energy, but it can't get anywhere because the grid doesn't have the capacity.
That'll have to be a consideration, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Long, did you indicate?
Yes, please, Chair. Sean, do you think the government's looking at sort of big sexy schemes, or will it involve other possibilities for a number of schemes, such as Nightingale Farm, Nightingale Park, rather, which I mentioned in Torquay? Would this help bring that forward, or is it just big schemes that the government's interested in?
No, thank you, Councillor Long. Those specifically about local clean energy, so the smaller schemes that may well fit the example that you just provided.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we shall move to the vote. Ken, this is your big moment. Well, maybe this is why Phil wasn't here. So we're going to move to the vote then. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed. That is unanimous. Okay, and that does bring us to the end of this afternoon's meeting. Thank you everybody for coming this afternoon. Can I just remind you that the date of the next meeting is scheduled for the 29th of May at 11 AM, and we'll be in the wonderful little town of Bideford next time. My phone's going again. Yeah, so we'll be in Bideford at Torridge District Council, 11 AM, 29th of May. Thank you very much indeed. A safe journey, and the meeting is finished.